Leadership is hard, and I've got some good news and I've got some bad news for you. The bad news is that I can't make it any easier, but the good news is that we can work on it together to get better. And you want to know the secret? Who you are comes before what you do. It's form before function. So let's get to work together. I'm Preston Poore, and this is PQ. Connor Beecham is in the mortgage industry, and he has a company called Hometown Mortgage. He's a great leader within the metro area here in Atlanta. He also works with a ministry called Purpose on Tap, where guys get together over a beer and talk about things of life, leadership, and faith. He recently got married to Kelly, and he'll talk a little bit about that in this upcoming episode. And then he's also a family friend of ours, and so excited to have him in. I've seen him grow over the years, and it's amazing the leader that he's become. Our conversation is going to explore Connor's motivations, his leadership style, and his faith. Welcome, Connor Beecham. So I want to start right away with you. You've got this organization that you are in your family with, right, around the mortgage business.
Yes. And
you're making waves here in Atlanta, and you've got this platform where you're communicating what you're doing. I see it on LinkedIn and other things you're doing. Tell me a little bit about your business, how you got started, and the service that you give people.
So the company is called Hometown Mortgage. My dad started the business in 1995. And that was the company that was, what my childhood was funded by, so it was always what's going on Hometown Mortgage, how are things at Hometown Mortgage. It grew to be a pretty big business. And my dad had this building right in the heart of downtown Alpharetta, and so everybody kind of saw it, knew it. We had this big, bright yellow Hummer that he put in the front yard all the time, and so people kind of would drive by and be like, that was when H2 had just come out, and so everybody knew what that was. Right. So it was fun as a kid to go around and do that, but the funniest part is my dad, I got in trouble a lot as a kid. I was just kind of
Imagine that.
Imagine that. Can you believe that? And he would, through like, punishments would be going to the mortgage company and having to cut the grass in the yard or do something in the filing cabinet or do something around the mortgage. So my whole childhood and even into college and post-grad, I was like, I am never getting in the mortgage business. Never. I never want to be in this because it was reflective of punishment for me.
Right.
And so finally, when I got out of college, I got into sales and I started realizing that, man, this is a really cool opportunity. And honestly, a lot of prayer and the Lord softened my pride. And I joined the business in 2018. And so I've been in it ever since. And it has been the single biggest blessing of my life outside of my wife, Kelly.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's been really, really good.
Well, good.
Yeah.
So the mortgage business,
yeah.
Just touch on that for just a minute. It kind of has its ups and downs, its ebbs and flows, doesn't it? Kind of tell me a little bit about how you and your family, how do you survive during the tough times, and then obviously you thrive when things are good. How do you manage all that?
So when the 2008 recession hit, my dad, I tell people it was kind of funny. We were set up in a way where we had a house in the beach, we had a house at the lake, we had a house, and so we had places everywhere. 2008 hits and all that goes away. And so in my life, I have seen what it's like to be in abundance, and I have seen what it's like for my parents to move in with my grandparents and for my room to be a couch in my grandparents' house. I have seen both those things. And so from that, and I wasn't even in the mortgage business at that time, I was in high school. From those two polar opposite experiences, I've tried to set up my life in a way where I live below my means, well below my means, and live modestly. And Kelly and I, my wife and I talk about this a lot of, we want to be just super thankful for what we have, and not live in a way of like, let's continue to shoot for the stars and have this thing or this house or this car or whatever. We want to just live right where we're at and live comfortably and be content with what the Lord's given us.
Do you think that's a generational thing too for quote unquote millennials, Connor? Because everything I've read is that they've experienced their parents going through those challenges and they saw the result of that. Do you think it impacts your friends as well, or do you think that's something unique to you and your family?
That's such a good question. I think
that's why I asked it.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think that generally, it totally depends on how you're raised. Because I know some people who really want to shoot for the stars and live a life in abundance, and that's fine.
Right.
And I know some people who are kind of just like me. I think it's completely dependent on how you're raised.
Sure
Yeah.
has a lot to do with
Yeah.
that, certainly. You know, one thing that I want to ask you about is that we have this in common. We both have family businesses,
Yeah.
right? So I
Yeah.
don't know if you knew that about we have a family business as well. The business is very different, but there are still family dynamics involved.
Right.
Working with a founder of the organization, then a couple of siblings that come along in different capacity, one running the organization, other one supporting on our side. Tell me about the dynamics of being in a family business. How do you find that? How does that work? How does that work when it comes down to the relationship with your dad, that you're the son, but boom, when you're business partners, when something goes awry or you need to make a decision or solve a problem? How does that work for you all?
That's great. Yeah. This was my number one biggest preventer of getting into business with my dad was I don't know how we can work together. I just don't know how we can do it. We have very similar personalities. We're very, driven, entrepreneurial, loud people. And so in our conversations in the front end, before I got in the business, I basically said, the only way this is going to work is if we are underneath the same umbrella, but you have your own little silo and I have my own little silo. And so we run our own teams. So I'm very grateful for this. He taught me how to do everything. And I had to sort of suck up my pride and listen to him and just kind of do whatever he told me to do for about a year. And then once that year hit, I kind of knew what to do a little bit. Not a lot, but a little bit. And, then we kind of started to run our own little businesses. Yeah. So we are in a unique setup where we don't have a ton of overlap on clients, on business relationships, on anything. We just share sort of the umbrella of Hometown Mortgage.
So businesses often, when you have that kind of dual input and dual ownership and things, and you run into a challenge, how do you resolve those with your dad?
I going off the kind of softening my pride thing, I have learned to sort of be like, yes, I have a thought about how we should solve this, but 9 times out of 10, if we go with what my dad says is the right direction, the history of him being in the business, 30 years plus of experience, just being really street smart and wise, I will rely on him and I'll use it as an opportunity to learn. Because the truth of the matter is, Preston, if I make a decision and it's a correct decision, that's fine. But if we go with whatever he does and I get to learn, that is so much more beneficial for the long term than me being right in the moment. And that's kind of the way that I try and approach it.
Yeah, thank you. That's like playing chess in your mind a little bit. So you're thinking strategically down the road, long term, how can I learn from my dad in these circumstances? And that's really, I guess, really submitting to him in that and his experience on it. So good. So a lot of leadership lessons are in that. But tell me a little bit about being a young leader in the Atlanta metro area. What's the biggest challenge right now from a leadership perspective that you see, not only for yourself, but maybe for the younger generation?
I think the biggest leadership thing that I have struggled with as as sort of a business owner and someone who, helping run ministries in the city, certainly has to do with understanding when to cut my losses. Because I like to control things and I like to sort of grip tightly onto things. If something doesn't go the way that I expect it to go, that's a hit on my pride, because I'm like, I wasn't right, or something is not going the way that I expect it to go. So I've hired people and I've gotten into ministry relationships with things that just weren't going well. And having to come to grips with the fact that they're not going well is really, really difficult. So I think that's been something that's been tough for me, but also a big lesson. I think that's pretty much all.
Okay, good.
I don't really know what other people.
No, that's okay. Yeah, that's great. So cutting your losses. So do you have an
Yeah.
example about when you actually had to let something go and what that looked like from a decision making process for you?
Definitely. We hit a point in 2020, in 2021 when I started trying to convince myself that I was going to build the next biggest mortgage company. And I was like, we're just going to do it. And so I started hiring all these younger guys, hired 2 younger guys. And the whole idea was train them up, get them ready, put them out there. And here we are in 2024, and neither of them work for me for a variety of reasons. Sure. But nothing bad. Just honestly, it just didn't work out. Didn't work out for both for different reasons, and they're both fine, and we're both still friends to this day. But here I am with this vision in my mind in 2021 about, man, we're going to grow this thing, and it's going to be awesome, and I'm going to be this great leader and all these things. And it's like the Lord was just like, nope,
Yeah.
You're going to focus on what I want you to focus on.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've gotten ahead of God in a lot of certain circumstances where I've gone and made decisions like you've made and kind of made my own path forward, and then I run into roadblocks and just really find out that maybe that wasn't where I need to go.
Right.
And I counsel people now just based on my experience, like your dad might counsel you in the mortgage business about experiences, that I need to first check and see where God's working and where he wants me to go, and then and wait for that path. Often there's that waiting time, and I am such an A-type personality. I often get ahead of him in different things, and then I find out, wow, that was maybe a non-productive time or whatnot. But there's still things that I learned, right, and good things that came along the way, but probably not. It was my own path and not maybe something out of his will that he had for me in my life. So
love that. That's great.
So true. Let's move on then. So thank you for that. Let's. I want to talk in terms of faith. I want to talk about this Purpose on Tap group.
You're familiar?
A little bit, yeah. So tell me a little bit about it. Tell me how it started. Okay. Tell me about how you would have got involved, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, how it started and got involved. So started in 2016. Our first event ever was the day after the Falcons lost the Super Bowl.
Wow, what a bummer.
Huge bummer.
Everybody needed something off the tap, right?
That's exactly right. So the whole idea was like, and I wasn't even involved in leadership at this point. This was the group in front of me. They set this whole thing up. They started planning it in like November of 2015, and the Falcons started getting really hot, and they're like, and it was literally the Monday after the Super Bowl on Sunday, and they were like, are the Falcons really going to do this? Are they going to actually be because we don't know what's going to happen. They lose, and then I think that the joke was like, we're going to give 3 beer tickets tonight instead of 2, or something like that.
Drown their sorrows.
Yeah, just drown their sorrows. But anyways, so a group of 4 or 5 guys started it, who were kind of mentors and buddies of mine in Atlanta, and I was kind of the perfect target demographic for them. I was like 23 or 4 at the time, not really connected in the city of Atlanta. And I heard about this thing through a friend. And so I went and I was like, 2 free beers and a speaker, let's go. I was a Christian. I was like, this is great. So started meeting and networking with a bunch of guys. And I just sort of fell in love with like the heart behind the ministry, which is basically a brewery ministry. It's come drink 2 beers, come network with some guys. And also, by the way, we have a faith-based speaker.
Right.
And the speaker is up there drinking their beer, and they're talking about the Lord. And so it's just it's this like polarizing thing, but it's also kind of beautiful and cool. So I was like, this is exactly what I want to be involved in this. So I stayed involved, and COVID kind of, obviously, just with anything that was in me, it kind of killed it for a little while. And so there was some building back that happened, but about 1.5 years ago, those guys approached me and basically said, do you want to come in and kind of pass this to the next generation? And so it felt like a quick yes. And so I did that, built out a board beneath me, and now we're actually going through passing it again. So we're going to go through this next year and then pass it again. Okay. But Purpose on Tap's in the best state that it's been in a long time, which is really, really cool.
That's fantastic. Yeah. I love the ministry. I love the atmosphere when you get there. I had a chance to experience that one time. So was my son, and then I have a number of other friends that go. It's at, is it correct? It's at Monday Night Brewery?
Not anymore.
Not anymore. It's moved.
We moved to the arch rival, Sweetwater Brewery.
That's okay.
We moved across town.
All right.
To get closer to our target audience, to be honest. Most of the guys that were attending, we did some research and some data, and we realized that most of the target audience was in Buckhead and not in West Midtown, like we thought. Yeah. And so we moved to Sweetwater, which has been great.
Good. And so tell me, when is it typically? When are the meetings?
So we meet quarterly now. It started as a monthly thing. That was a little bit crazy. We then went to 8 meetings, and now we're at quarterly events. And so our goal is do the biggest, baddest quarterly events that we can do with the best speakers. And so we meet. The meetings usually vary, but it's usually the first Wednesday of the quarter. That's when we do it.
Do you have a story without names of somebody that you've met, right, that came to Purpose on Tap?
Yeah.
And then you saw this growth in them, if you will, that got engaged and all that. Give us some examples of that, because I think that's so important.
I have dozens of these stories.
Okay.
So when I took over as executive director, it's kind of ironic. The purpose of Purpose on Tap was not quite defined. Our mission statement was long and ambiguous, so we didn't really understand what we were doing. We were just throwing events to throw events. So when I kind of came in, I wanted to shorten our mission statement to the shortest possible thing and then figure out what it was that we were even doing in our events. Because for all we knew, we were just throwing the event to throw the event. So we partnered with a Friday morning Bible study group that meets every Friday morning. And at every Purpose on Tap, now the goal is we operate at the top of this funnel that brings a lot of men into Atlanta. And at the very end, after the speaker, we pitch, get into a small group. So at every at church, the thing is kind of the altar call, right? And at Purpose on Tap, the thing is the small group call. So we get in and we say, like, you need to plug into community. Men's community is crucial. We have that option for you. So our mission statement is now simply helping men find Christ-centered community. That's it. From this other long one that I honestly can't even recite to you. So to answer your specific question, there is a particular guy that the first day that I sort of officially took over, I was up there and I was like, I hope this works. I'm just going to say, get into a small group. And I literally put my cell phone number on the back screen, projector screen. And there was a guy sitting front row that I didn't know at the time. And I was like, get in a small group, blah, blah, blah. Put my phone number up there. And I had like 20 text messages that night. Of men who wanted to plug in. And for those who don't know, Purpose on Tap generally has, 150 or so guys show up, 150 to 200 guys. And this one particular guy, especially, got into a small group that has brought him significant life. I mean, like, significant. Like, he went from, like, very depressed, very anxious, no courage, no courage at all in his life, no drive, no anything. And he's gotten in this group with a bunch of guys who have brought that out of him. And it's almost done a 180 in this guy's life. It's really cool. So
that's good. I'm glad you didn't say he did a 360.
Yeah, he's right back where he started.
That, right? Use that phrase. He did a 360.
And he's
that's
still
nice to
depressed.
Hear. Yeah. So good. So that's so important. So, but if I was sitting, or if you're sitting somebody that would just coming, what would you tell them about men and community? Why do they need it so much?
I think men tend to isolate. Men, I think it's part of, maybe it's the sin of pride for men, but men tend to isolate, in my opinion, because men tell themselves and have been taught that they need to do it all on their own to really show that they're worthwhile. And that's just not true. Yeah. You got to be, you've got stories, I've got stories of experiences and things that people go through that you have to share with other men that you can't share with women because they just simply won't understand it. And so you've got to be able to kind of say, I'm not crazy, I'm not weird, I'm going to share this with you, and then other people can come in behind you and support you in that way. I think that's why it is. Yeah,
that's the old John Doe phrase that said, no man is an island.
Yeah.
Right? And so we need each other.
Yes.
And the interesting thing I find is around loneliness.
Yes.
It's an epidemic.
It is an epidemic.
Right. And so as we're isolated and we think we're independent, we can do this on our own, nobody cares about what I've got going on, or I don't want to burden somebody else. It's actually valuable, worthwhile, life-changing, getting involved in a small group like you're doing. So I love what I call the funnel for you all, right? You're inviting people in and then getting involved in a small group where that's where the relationship is built. And networking at the Purpose on Tap, very purposeful, right?
Right.
But then when you go to that small group, you've got that relationship that's built, and that's where lives are changed, and they hear the gospel and things like that. So that's so powerful.
Right.
So speaking about, and I love, thank you for that on Purpose on Tap. Oh, by the way, what are some cool speakers you've had? I'm really curious to know, maybe a couple that have resonated with you or you've had fun listening to.
Jeff Foxworthy was our biggest, baddest speaker, and he's spoken twice. Spoken?
Spoken? I don't know.
Maybe it spoke. I don't know. He's been there twice, and he always brings the house down because people expect Jeff Foxworthy, blue collar comedy tour. Yeah. He's big redneck, whatever, and he is. But he also loves Jesus. Yeah. And it would shock you how much he loves Jesus. Yeah. Seriously.
Oh yeah.
There's so many stories I could share on that. But so Jeff, John Smoltz has spoke a couple times. We had Paul Bird, Braves broadcaster, speak. We had a guy named Jonathan Irons speak who was amazing. Married to Maya Moore, WNBA basketball player, and he was falsely incarcerated and all these things. And she quit the WNBA to bring him out of prison.
I remember that story.
Yeah, it was
sure.
Amazing. And then the next one, which actually hasn't even been released yet to the public. So
can we say it now? Is it okay?
Yeah, we can say it now. We've got Jeff Rincourt coming in December.
Really?
Yeah. So he's gonna crush.
Oh, good.
So,
I love Jeff.
Yeah.
I love when he was doing more full-time announcing with the Braves on the Valley broadcast. I appreciate the guys that are on there too, but I love the way Jeff approaches the game and communicates it so good. So he'll be exciting to have in there.
Totally agree. Yeah,
that's
we're
awesome
pumped for Jeff. It'll be good.
So let's dovetail a little bit on Purpose on Tap and talk about you and talk about faith. And I know that faith plays a big role in your life.
Yeah.
How's it shaped your leadership style, both in business and then also outside of work?
I think that the main thing with with faith and leadership in business is that I've learned is, I think when I was younger and I just come out of college, you hear servant leadership, and you're like, there's no way that being a servant also equals being a leader. There's just no way, because how do these guys get to the top if they're serving people all the time? And I'm 32 now, and I couldn't have been more wrong. I'm so old. But every year I feel like I learn more and more about how I was so wrong as a kid. You just don't understand it. The most impressive, the most people the people that I want to follow the most are the people who serve the most. My dad is a phenomenal example of this, to be honest with you. He is an incredible servant leader, and so I've learned that just kind of watching him over the years, but especially being in business with him, I've learned that too.
Was there a tipping point for you where you were trying it one way and then you said this servant leadership piece, probably I need to go in that direction versus maybe a more directive and about me thing? Or was this just something that evolved over time as you were mentored and you saw the great examples in front of you that you adopted and it came forward?
I think it's maybe a blend of both. Okay. I've had a couple spots in my life where I've sort of been caught up in, my own ego or pride or, let me do this for me. And it always fails to meet the expectation that your soul kind of desires out of whatever that thing is. And so I think observing it growing up, and also there's been a variety of examples. There hasn't been like one big light bulb moment, but the more and more that you don't get satisfied by yourself, the more you think, well, this can't be the answer. You've got to have another way to do this. And so then you start kind of looking at others and you go, okay, well, that's definitely the way to do it. That's the way to do it.
Yeah, that makes more sense. Do you have mentors in your life?
Yes.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about how that works for you. I mean,
I've got a mentor named Paul, and his kids went to the same school that I went to growing up. He spoke at Purpose on Tap, and he's led a Bible study with me and two of my best friends for 4 or 5 years now. And he is a absolute rock star, not a business guy, but just loves the Lord, and I just love spending time with him. My dad is obviously a mentor, and then my uncle, actually my dad's brother, is a psychologist, and he does it both on the sports level and at the corporate level.
Wow.
And so he's built this really cool business. And so I would say those three guys have kind of been my quote unquote life mentors so far.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. So what does a typical conversation look like when you get into a hole and you call them, or do you, how do you reach out and how do you connect with them?
I reach out to them for different reasons.
Okay. Got it.
So if I'm stuck in my head and I got to get out of my head, I'll call my uncle because he's a psychologist. If I have a problem and I don't understand a solution, I might call my dad. If I can't quite understand, or I'm wrestling with something that I've read in scripture or something spiritually or something with Kelly and I, I'll call Paul.
Yeah.
And so those three guys, and they've all taught me different things, I think in general, that I've applied to my life. And so I would say that's
it's funny. I'm sitting here thinking about this, and it's important not to have just one mentor, but maybe what we could call a portfolio of mentors.
Absolutely.
meaning based on your situation that you're in, even though if you only have one mentor and you go to them, they don't have any experience or thought on that, what do you do sometimes,
Totally.
right? So you've got to have different people that you're connected with. So that portfolio of mentors, and a friend of mine, Mark Whitaker, once said the phrase, he said, "Show me your mentors and I'll show you your future."
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
So pretty powerful
Very.
in the context. So you've got 3 powerful mentors that you've done, and your future's bright because of that. On the flip side of that, if you don't have anybody mentoring in you and coaching you and pouring into you, then that future may not be as bright. You may not reach your potential like you have the opportunity to do. So
how would you advise somebody to pick a mentor?
You know what? Well, thank you for asking that. I think
Sorry
mentors,
to flip the script.
No. Let's. It's a conversation. Seriously, the mentors that I've had in my life have first and foremost been people that I've respected. I've seen the leadership qualities that in them that I wanted to emulate or aspire to. I think of one, Rick Kerr. I'll mention his name. He was a backup Washington Redskins offensive lineman, played for Joe Gibbs. I got to know Rick through the Coca-Cola system. But Rick tested me a few times, right, to see if I was really in the game or not at Coke with him and trying to help him in his leadership. He was the VP, and I was calling on for the Coca-Cola company. But Rick really leaned in with me, and he took me under his wing, and he showed interest and care, and he was probably not as interested in me professionally, but when he started showing interest in me personally about me growing and what manhood looked like and leadership looked like and those things, he poured into me that way. I've got mentors from I even connect with back in the day when I was in youth group in Colorado, right? I'm still connected to some of those people. Beyond mentorship, I also have a thing called a personal advisory board. And so I have 6 people that surround me that I meet with, do one-on-ones monthly or quarterly, and I go to them with specific, and just like you, have a portfolio of people that have different experiences that I can ask them different questions, and they come to me with different perspectives.
Are they your peers? Or are they older than you?
Some were. Some are older. Some were virtual relationships that I met since 2020. Others that there's one named Holly, and she sits on the board, and she and I worked at Coke together for 20 plus years. So we have the common background. She gets some of the stuff that I go through, but she came to faith later on in her career at Coke, and so we've got that connection as well. So she can speak right into me on those things. And so varied. So thank you for taking me down that rabbit trail, if you will. But I think the idea around mentorship and having advisors around you is that, we can't figure out life often on our own. Mm-hmm. And it's good to have multiple advisors around us, multiple mentors pouring into us that will really make a difference about our future and helping us reach that potential.
Right.
Does that help? Does that answer your question?
Agree. Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Hopefully I didn't over answer on that. But
no. I love that. I love that.
That's good. You got any other questions?
Not this time.
Not right now.
We'll flip the script back. Oh
hey, I want to, as we start wrapping this up, tell me a little bit about your marriage and wedding to Kelly. You've obviously, I wrote this to you, and I'm going to say this to you publicly and live, that you definitely outkicked your coverage.
No question.
My friend, right? So I appreciate that's the humility, right, that goes along with that, and saying, yes, you're right.
Totally.
I'm the same way, so I get it. But in your marriage with Kelly, how's it all shifted your perspective on life, leadership, faith, those types of things?
Oh my gosh. I'm 3.5 weeks in.
You've learned so much.
I've learned a ton. Let me just get on the podcast and explain it all. I mean, you learn so much. I think that I think the thing that 3 weeks in that keeps coming to my mind is, I'm now with this person every day, and I love her and I love being with her. But through that, there are so many things in your heart and your soul that when I was kind of dating her and engaged to her, I was like, we'll probably never talk about this or that. And those things come up because there's so much raw emotion that just happens when you're married, and you get so vulnerable with each other, and that takes your relationship even deeper. And so I think that, I could probably say a ton of things, but really more what I'm doing right now is I'm trying to just absorb everything that's going on. Because it's all changed. My life's completely changed. I got married at 32. And so I had 10 years basically of being completely independent. And shedding that independence away has actually been kind of hard, which is probably normal. So I think those are the few things.
What would Kelly say if I asked her?
To your question?
Yeah.
I think that she would say, you're a wuss. You don't get up as early as me. This girl gets up at 5 a.m. every morning.
She's
and goes
disciplined,
and works out.
huh?
She's so disciplined, bro. Yeah. And I will literally lay in bed for an additional hour while she's working out. And I'm like, I'm getting up at 6. I'm doing pretty good. And she's up at 5.
Wow.
So that's probably what she'd say. She's
that
like,
may rub off on you.
My new husband's a wuss is probably what she'd say.
That's probably what she'd say. That's funny. Hey, there's a couple of the questions I want to lead into. So I've got this leadership philosophy that I developed at the Coca-Cola Company, and it's that how is greater than what. So how you do something is greater than actually what you achieve or do. Results are important, right? If you weren't getting the mortgages, signing the people, closing houses, all this stuff, you wouldn't be in business, right? But the how you do things, about how you build that business, how you treat people in the business, the way you go about it, your approach, make all the difference, right, on that. So this idea of how versus what, how, if you think about that in the context of your leadership style and the way you've built this leadership with the company, with purpose on tap, how does that philosophy fit in for you? Does it make sense at all to you? The how is greater than the what, how you treat people and work through them, with them and through them?
Yes. I would say that, the what for us is just doing a lot of volume. When you're in sales, it's just doing a lot of volume and then reaping the rewards of doing that. But to me, I was in a role for 3 years out of college where it was B2B sales, and we sold insurance to companies. It was so boring. And it was so thankless. I would sell something and no one would even know that I existed. No one would even know that I spent hours and dozens of hours on trying to place that, in our business. And it was 3 years of pretty dang, I really don't like this. So ever since I've gotten in the mortgage business, every time that we have a closing or that we have we help someone achieve a loan or do something for somebody, it's the opposite. It's so thankful. People are so deeply satisfied with the work that we've done. They're so deeply satisfied with how much we cared for them. And so the how has completely shifted to how can I give these people the best possible experience that they can find anywhere else, or they won't be able to find it anywhere else. And so there's just been a refining through that, know. And so that's kind of that's going back to your question earlier, kind of what's kind of been my role at the company. What I've been thinking about is when I'm my dad's age, how are we going to be set up? And I'm way more worried about developing our processes to make it as smooth as possible for the client than I am about doing a bunch of volume.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Yeah. That's good. Great answer. Thank you for that. The how is a differentiator. Makes a difference, doesn't it? Makes an impact.
Definitely.
Really good. So, hey, let's wrap up. Question here. This is kind of the takeaway moment for our listeners. With everything you've talked about, your life experience, what would you say is a takeaway? If you had a message to millennials that are listening today, the younger generation, your generation, if you will, you've got the mic for a minute. What advice would you give them right now?
I give this advice to a ton of people who are, fresh out of college. Your first job is not your last job. So you should take that job to build your skills. You should not take it for the money. I remember coming out of school, coming out of UGA, I had a bunch of buddies who were going to work at, the Big Four or, some other big finance company, and they were making more than me. And I'm like, dang it, I'm not making as much. And I'm sitting here thinking about that now, and I'm like, it doesn't even matter they made more money. They went in there to refine and build their skills, and they had that mindset, and I didn't have that mindset. I did end up building the skills, but if you go into your first job with, I am here for one reason, and it is not to get paid, it is to build skills in the direction that I want to go.
That's good.
That skill will grow, and that will open a door for you. And then that will develop another skill opportunity. And so you might even have 5 or 6 or 7 jobs in your lifetime, maybe more, and every single one you grow and build a new skill. And that will lead you to where ultimately your purpose is, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, a great opinion. Yeah, I think I can validate that certainly. I tell people all the time that they expect their career to be like a microwave. Boom, it happens immediately. It's not an Instapot. It takes time to bake. And what I love about what you're saying is being intentional and saying, okay, in this moment, while I'm here, what can I learn that I could transfer somewhere else? Now, you're not there to leave, right?
Exactly.
But we want to add the value and deliver those results, but it's the how.
Right.
And so I think that's so important is taking the time to think through that. You know, Connor, what I love about you, I want to call this out in you, is that what I hear in this conversation is that you think. And what I mean by that is that you've talked about mission, vision, purpose, those long-range things. What does a business look like after my dad leaves? What role does faith in the long run play? Those things, and those are so important. My dad told me a long time ago, he's a college professor in applied mathematics and got his degree from Caltech, his PhD. So I don't say that to impress you, but to impress this point upon you.
Okay.
My wife always busts me. She says, no, you're trying to impress us.
Yeah.
But the reason is my dad always told me that people are taught they're taught what to think, not how to think. They're taught what to think, not how to think. And what I mean by that is that if you can actually sit down and think through some of these things, think long term, instead of thinking that, hey, I have to go out and get a job to make the most money. I need to be successful. I need to be powerful. I need to get a big house, car. Those things may come someday, and those things aren't bad necessarily in and of themselves. But it's that strategic thinking that you have that, what does this look long term? What do I need to do now to get here? And that's a differentiator. I've always said that the people that only know what to do will always work for the people that know why they do it.
Right.
It's kind of like a Georgia person working for a Georgia Tech person.
Right.
Just kidding.
Easy,
right? I hit a chord.
And the same thing on that is, why would you take a job to buy things that you don't even really like for to impress people that also don't like you? Right. Yeah. And it's like, it's just backwards.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I hear you. All good.
I love that.
Anything else on your heart, mind, and soul before we move into the hot seat? I'm going to stick some questions in front of you and ask you real quick.
Hit me with the hot seat.
Let's
do it.
All right, hit me with your hot seat. All right. Connor, here's the hot seat questions. Number one, what's one podcast that you can't stop listening to?
Rogan.
Rogan
And Peterson.
Really? Why do you like them?
Rogan, while not a believer in any capacity, his podcast is him asking questions and getting to know people. And to me, there's an element of, he's got the most popular podcast in the world, but he's submitting himself under whoever he has on his podcast.
Love it.
And he is so curious, and I love that.
Yeah.
I think that's amazing. And then Peterson, I think, is the most brilliant mind, and that I listen to. He's a genius.
That's great. I'm looking over at my producers over there. You think we can get Rogan on the podcast anytime?
Yeah,
right?
He's coming.
Yeah, he's in.
Coming.
So let's see. Let's see. Sounds like it. Hey, how about if you had to give a TED Talk tomorrow? I'm sure you're familiar with TED Talks, right? What would it be about?
The importance of first-time home ownership.
Okay. Why?
I just know the most about it.
Okay.
And honestly, I can't.
You could make it dramatic and.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. I could bring in all the stats. I could do all the things. But it's crucial.
Good. What's one hobby that people might not know that you have?
Oh my gosh, I play in a men's league softball team.
Do you? What
Love
position?
Pitcher.
Pitcher. Ooh. Is it fast pitch or slow pitch?
Slow pitch.
Slow pitch. You're 32 now. You've moved out of the fast stuff, right?
Yes.
So good.
That's that one for sure.
If you could switch jobs with anyone for a day, what would it be? What would the job be that you switch with, and why, and who?
Oh man. I've always been interested in what Brian Kemp does. I've always been interested in being a governor.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's so fascinating.
I can see that in you. Is there a political future for Connor Beecham?
Probably not, but that's probably why I'd switch places with him to just dip my toe in the water and just see what it's like and then get out of it. But I think he's got the coolest job.
Well, actually, we have Brian Kemp on in the next episode. So
I'll
to him. No, I'm
tell
just
him.
kidding.
Tell him what's up.
All good. All good. No, that's great. I think and I'll call that out in you again. If that's something that the Lord's calling you to do, you need to consider that because you have I think the personality and the vision, the mission. All those things, you're starting to think that way. And Kemp is certainly, from my perspective, has been a good leader in the state, right?
Yeah, I think so.
And so if you can go and learn from somebody like that, whether it's in your professional career or in a public career like that, that'd be very helpful.
Right.
So it's awesome.
Completely agree.
Love the idea. Hey, last question. This should be simple. I think we've already got the answer to it. But are you a morning person or a night owl?
Morning. 6 a.m.
Wait a minute. No, wait. Kelly's up at 5. You're up at 6. Does that make you? That makes her a morning person.
My day starts a little later than hers.
All right.
So we're just gonna adjust those, and we're gonna call it a wash.
Got it.
We call it a wash.
Morning. Awesome morning. I am a morning person myself too. So I was up
that.
at 4:30 this morning. Believe it or not.
Were you really?
Yeah. Don't ask me what I was doing.
Why do you do that?
You know, when you get older like I am, you just don't sleep as much. I got a lot of things going on. I had
You
to
know
get ready
what?
for my podcast interview with you today, right?
So I'll add this in the last.
Okay.
You do not have to add this in the thing.
Oh,
if
no,
you
we're
want
gonna
to.
keep
But you know who made me a morning person?
Who?
Your son-in-law.
Really?
Yes.
Foley George
Foley
did?
George.
Why did
Foley
he do that?
George
How did he
made me
do that?
He when I was so I got married late.
Mm-hmm.
I was living on my own, a little bit lonely, kind of doing my thing. Foley was like, "You're a wuss if you don't get up and work out with me at 5 a.m. You're a wuss."
Peer pressure.
Peer pressure.
Yeah.
And every time, it was a couple times I didn't show up, and
Yeah.
he would text me, and he would just destroy me. And I'm like, I needed this so
Yeah.
bad. And so I'd always go right back. And we
Yeah.
did that for 2 years before they moved to New York.
Well, that's awesome.
So-
And I also, and this is just a personal note, I appreciate, I think you actually met Foley in New York City, right, when they first moved
Yeah.
up there
Yeah.
to help him move in
Yeah.
to their place. So thank you for all your help.
Love those
The
people.
Poore family appreciate your friendship. We appreciate you. And I hope our listeners enjoy our conversation today. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Preston. Appreciate it.